How's it going, guys? This is Real Top based in Tokyo. So I basically got my film negatives printed at National Photos. And if you guys haven't checked, I previously made a video about film labs within Tokyo. It's a great to watch. Actually, not many people have seen it, or if I'm right, only 300 people seen that video. But basically, kind of in that video, cover like the film labs where they do processing of films within Tokyo. If you're ever traveling, I think it's a must watch. But within that video, I kind of briefly talked about the two professional labs in Tokyo, which is Shashinkosha, based around in Akihabara, and National Photos, which is located around in between Sangenjaya and also Komazawa Daigakumae, which is like 3-4 stations away from Shibuya. This time around, I actually was able to get my film negatives, my 6x9 gigantic negatives, printed in a lab by National Photos, and I thought it'd be nice to sort of like mention it on my channel and also talk about the photos I got printed, which is actually 6 of them. And in that sort of like video prior to this video, I kind of mentioned their services, and I'll just stick in that sort of like a screenshot of what kind of like service they do. But they actually do hand prints in both black and white and also color negatives. This time around, because I shoot with color negatives, I wanted to get 6 of my shots printed at National Photos and to see sort of like, how should I say, get a gist of what the colors will look like in actual formality. And because up until this point, I've only been sort of like scanning them on my GTX 830 Epson scanner, which I made a video on prior to this. I thought it would be nice to sort of like see the difference of what a true handprint made by a professional will look like, and sort of like dedicate that in this video. Okay, so normally I would think that if you're sending your photos to a lab to get it printed, I would say that in most cases you would want to sort of like send the exact same photos shot on the exact same film stocks, but shot in different times of the day, morning, afternoon, nighttime, and also I guess in the different seasons, to sort of like eyeball what it would look like. However, if you looked at my sort of like course of my, I guess, YouTube videos, when I started out, I shot with Pro 160 NS from Fujifilm, which they actually marketed as the best sort of like entry level sort of like medium format film stocks. After that, I shot with Pro 400H, and because those two film stocks were, they kind of disappeared, Fujifilm doesn't make any color negatives medium format film stocks, I basically migrated it towards Lomography and then into Kodaks. I shot with Lomography 100, 400, 800, I already made a video on, and then later I went to Portra series, and also right now I currently shoot with Kodak Gold 200. So there's been a lot of like changes going on over the course of the, I guess, period out ever since I started my YouTube channel. But I just wanted to see the color difference of those film stocks to sort of like eyeball what it will look like in true life. And also shot with Cinestill 800T. So from that, I basically sent in Fuji 160 NS, one photo of that, 2 photos of Fuji Pro 400H, Gold 200 from Kodak, Lomography 800, and also Cinestill 800T. So that's 6 photos or 6 negatives. I basically sent it to a lab. They actually, the professionals sort of like printed one, dedicated their soul into it, and I thought it was nice to sort of like talk about each and every photos, what I thought about it, and yeah. And oh yeah, in terms of paper size, I'll stick a screenshot of the paper size they print onto and also the price. You can basically check on their official website, but in Japan, specifically for these color negatives and I guess black and white, there's like 2, I guess, main standard print sizes, which is yotsugiri and mutsugiri. And mutsugiri is, in North America terminology, is 8 by 10 inches, which is like 203 millimeters by 254 millimeters. And the larger one is called yotsugiri in Japan. In North America, you guys call it by 10 inches by 12 inches, which is like 254 millimeters by 305 millimeters. And for people who are starting out, especially me who never printed, this is a really obtrusive sizing because I'm used to A4 sizes. But if you have a sort of like a document folder size of an A4, the mutsugiri size, the 8 by 10, will fit perfectly. However, a yotsugiri won't fit into a document size of A4, so that's actually one area to mention. But in this case, I basically had it printed in Mutsugiri, which is 8 by 10 inches for your information. Okay, so getting the introduction out of the way, which took quite a long time, sorry guys, but I basically got my photos back from National Photos, and each and every single photo is actually in a sort of like a transparent protection sleeve. You need protection at all costs, or else you will get you will regret it later. So it's great to see. And National Photos, they also put it in this sort of like, how should I say, paper envelope. And in my case, this is just my way of doing it. I always carry some kind of this is a cardboard box, protection box, which is roughly A4 size. Like I said, I had it printed in Mutsugiri size, which is smaller than A4 size. So, and I was able to snag this from Standard Products for 300 yen, so that's like $2 or so. I'll probably make a video talking about my Standard Products, aka 100 yen store haul for related to film photography related. But this is basically a document case, which I basically slide in my photos in here. I'll stick in a BTS for you guys to sort of like transport it safely. It's probably better than like carrying it in a default sort of like paper, sort of like envelope. But yeah, went a little bit off topic. But my first photo that I received from them is shot on Fuji 100NS. This is basically, like I said, my first film stock when I started shooting with my medium format camera, which I have forgot to say, every single photo is shot on my GW690 Mark III camera. And like I said, Fuji 120NS, for this shot, I shot around Takanao Gateway Station. I already made a video on it. I'll stick in a link somewhere. But Takanao Gateway Station is on the Yamanote line. It's the newest station that opened a couple of years back, but it was under construction. They were making a mall, a gigantic mall, which opened recently for people who are tourists who love shopping and stuff like that. But this area around was like really desolate. It was like really isolated. It was like sort of like a landfill actually. And basically shot around that area with my GW690 Mark III Fuji 160NS. And I remember this day being a really sort of like a cloudy day, which did not match shooting with a Fuji 160NS because it's an ISO 160 film stock. So I kind of underexposed it by one stop or so. I remember just wanted to see the colors. And at the same time, this period, I think it was like back in 2021. I think it was like 1 year after the Tokyo Olympic was being postponed. There was this hydrogen gas station, and because of the Olympics, they had sort of like an advertising on the left side. So I thought that looked really nice. So I basically grabbed a shot. And this is a characteristics of the Fuji film stocks that, unlike Kodak's film stock, it's like really, how should I say, more on the quarter tones in terms of color. The greens typically pop out, but in this gas station photo, there were no greens. But you can tell that the shadow areas are really on the quarter side compared to the typical Kodak's film stock. Okay, so two photos I basically shot with Pro 400H. One is, I'll stick in a BTS shot from the top actually, but one shot I basically got it printed from National Photos, a photo of Hatoya Hotel, and I already made a video on it, everything I shot in Pro 400H. This shot in particular, I shot inside the hotel, looking outside on the opposite direction. I remember shooting this in the lobby area, and on the other side, you had to like walk across a sort of like a walkaway to go into your sort of like accommodation area, so your bedroom actually. And I kind of remember this, that the exposure of the outside and the indoor was roughly 3 or 4 stops. So I wanted to see sort of like how much the shadow detail retained its sort of like look compared to outside actually. Maybe because this is sort of like a test print, I guess people go back into the lab to make corrections, incremental changes. But probably if I go back into a lab, I would probably want the foreground lobby area much more brighter and to sort of like balance it out. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that because I shot this sort of like handheld, I think it was like 5.6, f5.6, because the lobby area was like really dark actually during this time. I wanted the sort of like outside to not go fully blown out. So I kind of wanted, I think I remember that I thought that the foreground would be crushed, but I was like surprised that National Photos actually kind of retained the sort of like a balance of the foreground by showing some of the details there, which kind of got me off guard in a good sense. And because I shot this in Pro 400H, the sort of like the green right here actually retained its sort of like color, which was really surprising. And because Pro 400H has those characteristics of showing the cyans and blues much more stronger than the Kodak's counterpart, it kind of matched this hotel because this hotel like existed like a couple of decades back, and although it has this sort of like retro vibe, it kind of matches perfectly well with the Pro 400 film stock. So yeah, that's kind of marvel to see actually. So yeah. Okay, my second photo is I got this exact similar shot as the Hatoi Hotel, shooting at Okutama Lake actually. I remember shooting this during the fall, winter season, not winter, near fall actually, when it's really chilly. And not many people know, but Tokyo's countryside, #1 location to photograph. I never made a video on it, of the best location to photograph in Tokyo 2025, but has to be Okutama Lake. And this is a really marvel location, especially when you're going there during the really chilly season. I wouldn't suggest going during the summer because probably you won't see the greenery as greener as now, unfortunately. But I remember like photographing this at a souvenir shop in this Okutama Lake. There's a souvenir shop. There's also a location where you can eat lunch. And I was basically walking around the souvenir shop, and there was this windowsill with a counter actually, which you can take a break. And I was basically gazing outside, and it was a marvel because you can basically see the background mountainous region of Tokyo actually, along with during this day it was like perfectly, you can see the like the clouds floating in the background. And in the kind of in the mid foreground there were two people taking a break. I don't know, I was taking a BTS for you guys, taking a break near this rest stop. And in the counter area, the national photos did not realize, but it kind of cropped the sort of like a cleaning rug in the foreground actually. I actually wanted that in there, but they kind of cropped it. But yeah, that's like one area to mention. And also the lake itself, you can see that there's a dam right here. So perfect location to shoot with Pro 400H. I just wanted to see the Fuji greens, how the colors will look. And it's just a marvel to see, especially when you're shooting something in the nature side of things. Pro 400H is no doubt the best film stock to shoot photograph. Unfortunately, it's discontinued, but I was really happy to get this shot printed. And by looking at these prints, and unlike, you know, shooting with digital, you don't look at photos this close up, you know. And it's one of the great things about having your photos printed, especially on Silver Halide. It's just a marvel to see. I got mine printed on sort of like, how should I say, glossy paper. You could actually choose between glossy paper and semi-glossy. Might have been better option to get it printed on silver, not silver, but semi-glossy paper. Then I could visually see the, you know, the sparkles of the photo. But yeah, went a little bit off topic. Pro 400H, 2 photos from National Photos. Okay, so my 4th photo, I got it printed on Kodak Gold from Kodak Gold 200, which I shot at Awakamogawa. When I started my YouTube channel, I kind of took a trip, like 3 trips actually, around the Chiba prefecture area. And if you guys do not know, Chiba is the state on the right side of Tokyo. The shape looks similar to Florida, unfortunately, but it's not Florida. I went to Inubosaki, which is a far east, the most east you could go in Japan. And on the southern tip, there's Tateyama in another area. On the right side, southeast, is Awakamogawa, which is famous for aquariums actually. The Kamogawa Sea World is actually famous, especially for killer whales actually. They were doing a show, and when I was walking back towards the exit, I found these sort of like white, sort of like chairs being perfectly lined around the sort of like umbrellas, parasols that were being folded down, unfortunately. And because this day, I remember it was like really hot during this day, the majority of people were sitting on the right, far right. You can see a little bit of people on the right side. No one wanted to sit in the super hot, sweltering summer day, I remember. And I basically grabbed this shot because it looked really nice with sort of like the foreground, there's a big sign actually on the right side, sort of like indicating where the tourists should walk. And also in the background, there were a couple of clouds floating in the background. And to my eyes, this looked a little bit underexposed in a sense. Maybe the people at the National Photos thought they did not want to blow out the highlights of the chairs and also the background, so they kind of toned it down. But in my eyes, I would want it a little bit overexposed to sort of like showcase that it was a really hot day. But yeah, this was rather nice in that sense. And this is kind of really interesting. After you get it printed, you can sort of do side-by-side comparisons. When you compare it with the 160 NS that I shot on the cloudy day and the Kodak Gold 200 that I shot, the amount of contrast looks really similar in that sense, that it doesn't look too bright. It looks a little bit toned down in that sense, and kind of makes me want to go back into the lab, and if I were to make a little bit of a correction, I would like expose it a little bit more. So yeah, that's like one area to point out of the Kodak 200, which is my main film stock. I might have, if I had a chance to go back in the lab, I would want to increase the amount of the yellow to make it much more summery in that sense, because this area is like really near the shoreline, lots of beaches and stuff like that. So yeah, Kodak Gold 200 printed at National Photo. Fifth photo, which is the shocker of out of the 6 actually, is Lomography 800. And I think on the earlier years when I started my YouTube channel, I shot a series of photographing with the Lomography series, especially amusement parks and sort of like fun areas. Yomiuri Land, I think I shot with 100. I shot with Lomography 400 and also Lomography 800 series. I basically shot around Tokyo Disneyland and not inside. And this is another location that I highly suggest photographing, which is around Tokyo Disneyland, because it's a really unique location, because Tokyo Disneyland is like situated right near the shorelines of the Tokyo Mon or Tokyo Lake actually. And I was basically, during this period, it was like lockdown during the pandemic season, so I had like nothing to do. Tokyo Disneyland during this time was closed actually, so basically took my time around, walking around, I think it was like a couple of kilometers, and I found the Tower of Terror, which was situated, you could basically see it from outside actually, and I basically grabbed this shot. Normally I should photograph these types of location in horizontal orientation, but this time around, because the Tower of Terror was like so gigantic, I basically was able to like shoot it vertically, and there was sort of like a row that was starting to split, so basically photographed that in the foreground, and there was a light pole right in between the sort of like the building itself, and there's a semi sort of like area sticking on the right side actually. And this was actually shocking to see, because I never knew that Lomography 800 looked this nice in the eyes when it's like printed. It's like a marvel actually. And because the sun was hitting the building on the top left, like 45 degrees angle actually, you could still see a considerable amount of details on the right side. Normally it would be like pitch black, but the people at the National Photos probably were able to like pull that information of the shadow on the right side up, which was really great. And yeah, this is like the greatest shocker of them all actually. I'm glad I was able to like print this and on this sort of like Silver Halide Print from National Photos. It's like really a marvel to see actually. Okay, so last but not least is this photo that I shot with Cinestill 800T. This was actually the most shocking result that I've received, probably in a good way. When I actually sent my film negatives to National Photos, I initially wanted all my like film negatives to be sort of like color negatives, but it turns out of curiosity, I was wanted to know what Cinestill 800T looked like on a Silver Halide Print, as a Silver Halide Print. And when I sent it off to the lab, and when I retrieved it, the person who actually did the sort of like the prints for me, who's the professional, said that he had the most trouble color correcting the Cinestill 800T, baking this onto Silver Halide due to the fact that the Cinestill 800T is a tungsten-based film stock. Thus, compared to color negatives, which it would turn out all right, Cinestill 800T, on the other hand, the color spectrum gets affected more in terms of what lighting is used. And if it's like fluorescent lighting, it becomes like a really cyanish, bluish, cool tone. However, this shot that I photographed at Takao Station, I remember like photographing this during pure near winter season, actually during the cold time of the day, actually in pitch midnight. Actually, I found this like coffee shop being situated on the roadside actually, and I remember that the sort of like the sign was emitting this sort of like warm tone, and I really wanted to photograph this. Remember getting my tripod out in the roadside, getting my camera GW690 on there, taking this shot, long exposure. I remember it was like 10 seconds or 12 seconds or so. I basically shot 2 photos, one from a 45-degree angle from the side to give sort of like a depth, and also one shot from directly shooting across the road. And I basically had the one shooting straight at it, sent it to a lab, and I'm actually really happy that this looks really nice in my eyes. Compared to like color negatives, which is just typically like warm in that sense. This, on the other hand, the surrounding sort of like foreground and also the background is like pure blue, but the shop itself is pure red, orangish in a sense. And the person who did it for me said that he had trouble like color correcting of pressing the buttons, like, and he said to me that if I'm ever going to allowed to make this even better, I should not touch the yellow tones, but more on the cyans and the magentas and the reds and stuff like that, instead of the yellows, to make it better. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that this turned out really nice in my eyes. So yeah, I rambled too much on my prints, but that's basically it on talking about getting my color negatives printed at National Photos. It's actually once in a lifetime experience, giving the professional to do their work, and at the same time, what's great about photography is getting it printed instead of having it just scanned and having it displayed on the web. You get a different perspective of what the colors will look like, and at the same time, you can learn so much. Just looking at the LCD screen, monitor, smartphone. Normally, when you take a photograph, scan it, and just look at it on the digital format, I guess normally you don't look at it or pay too much attention to the fine details. But once you get it printed, it makes you want to wonder, like, if I reshot this photo, how should I make it better? In a sense, like, for some of the photos, I realized that, especially the photos that I shot indoors, the foreground wasn't that pure sharp, in a sense, but it makes you wonder, if I had a tripod, if I shot this in f16 or maybe 22, would I get a different result? But that's the great thing about photographing with film stocks. You can learn from your mistakes. Oh, this photo's not too sharp, and it makes me want to wonder, like, if I get the second opportunity, I would probably want to shoot it even better. So yeah, you learn from your mistakes, progress in the future. So yeah, that's basically it on my video. Hopefully this video is not too long, just me rambling about my photos that I got from National Photos. And thank you for sort of like printing my work. Actually, I learned a lot from getting it printed. It's one of those moments where you know that money is spent well, and yeah, I'm thankful for them to get it printed. Yeah, I have no words actually. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative. I'm curious, like, if you have any advices, if ever printed your work in a lab or a rental lab, actually, if you have any advices, I would love to hear from you guys. And yeah, I'm also curious, like, what format or size do you guys like print when you do your prints in a lab? Do you print mostly in 8x10 or 10x12? I would love to hear from you guys, like, which one would you prefer, one for the other, or do you guys do more larger prints in the lab? So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative. If you have any questions, I'm happy to reply because I live in Tokyo, Japan right now. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out.